Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another fabulous Friday rambling. I'm, of course, your perpetual host, David Horton, aka the Bardic One, master of the Tuesday night game streams and the Friday night Friday ramblings, and a little bit of echo effect. Echo, 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 echo. Now, we're gonna have a little bit of fun today because we're gonna discuss something that is a classic video game series, but at the same time is also infamous because it all comes down to the concept of licensed characters. Now, for those of you who do not understand that term at all, because, it's always good to have a good primer here. Licensed characters refer to the fact that instead of creating your own original characters for your video game, you take characters that have already been established, usually through an alternate form of entertainment, such as movies or TV series, and you pay their creators for the rights to use their creations in your games. Sometimes, depending on the characters who you're licensing from, you may just pay a one-time upfront fee for a certain amount of time or number of games. Sometimes it's more of a profit-sharing thing, like, okay, we'll let you use our characters, but you have to give us, 50% of the profits. Again, can either be for a one-off thing or just X amount of years. Just depends on the contract and how it's negotiated. Now, video games have a long history of licensed characters. Usually one-offs. You get a lot of movies will have video game adaptations that are just quick one-and-dones. There are companies who have pretty much built their entire reputation off producing licensed games. Of course, you have things like the Garfield character, who has featured in a variety of video games and across a variety of systems over the years. The Muppets pop in and out. Sometimes straight adaptations of their movies or TV shows. Sometimes more of just a general, we're using these characters in an otherwise original game. It's a thing. And of course, there's also licensing real-life celebrities, such as Mike Tyson for the NES classic Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, as well as pretty much any sports games produced in the last 30-odd years using actual players from Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, WWE. They have yearly licensed wrestling games. So yes, if you are a celebrity, you can certainly license your likeness to a game. Heck, the Madden football series, they use John Madden's name, and he usually featured on the covers. I think eventually they started putting regular football players on there. Yeah, because that's the Madden curse. But first few games, it did feature John Madden himself on the cover. So that's your quick summary up into the basics of licensed characters. As I said, licensed characters, sometimes you get them for one game, sometimes you get them for more. And that's the heart of the series we're going to discuss today, which is the Crazy Castle series. Now, the Crazy Castle series is a platform action puzzle hybrid game. Basically, what this means is that at first glance, it looks like a standard platform game. In the case of Crazy Castle, you have to collect a certain number of items in each given stage, which is seen as a room of a castle. And then you move on to the next stage, but the trick is that you have to dodge enemies or catch them in booby traps, which requires careful time and planning. This is where the major puzzle element comes in, because you have limited resources, so you have to be very precise and carefully planned out in your moves in these games. This makes the games kind of difficult for your people who grew up on your standard platform games, where you're pretty much, running, jumping around, and, you have free reign to kill enemies, the most traditional way being jumping on top of them. Classic Mario squash. So, it can certainly, for people who are not of a strategic mindset, they can be very difficult games. Now, okay, well, what's all this got to do with licensed characters? Well, it's very simple. The creator of the Crazy Castle series was Kemco. Kemco decided that, from the outset, what these games needed to really catch people's eyes and get them to try and play the games and give them a chance is to use licensed characters, so that they would be like, oh, hey, I love this guy, I totally want to play as this guy in a video game. And then in theory, they would get hooked on the mechanics of the Crazy Castle series and play subsequent games in the series. Now, this is not an unheard of and completely insane concept. This actually works quite well in different settings. In real life, that's where a lot of celebrity endorsement ideas come from, is, hey, get them in the door, get them to try the product. Once they dig the product, you can sell them other products from the same line, even if you don't have the celebrity endorsement, because they're like, oh, hey, dude, the frying pan was so great, I'll totally buy the carving knife from them, because I love their one product. Now, in Kemco's case, they continued using licensed characters instead of creating their own OCs, but with a little bit of a twist. See, character licensing is usually not done, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, when video games were really first regularly using licensing. Sorry, got really awkward sentence overstructuring there. Back when the Crazy Castle series was first started in the late 80s, licensing was not done as a international deal. As such, you could have the licensing rights to characters in Japan, where your company is located and your games are originally created. However, your company may not have publishing rights to those characters when you get ready to release the game in Europe or America, as those are the three big markets: Asia, Europe, America. And as such, you may have to change your characters. Well, in the case of Kemco, they not only had to change their characters in the earliest days of the Crazy Castle series, but they actually had to swap licensing rights as the series went on. But they always just licensed other characters. As I said, there's all the Crazy Castle series is licensed characters. It's not it's not a thing. You know, so, excuse me, double check my research there, folks. Blah, blah. Try not to lie to your viewers. But yeah, so you had an issue of, due to the nature of using licensed characters, when you do not have a single international all across the world global licensing deal. You have the same game, depending on what country you play it in, it features different starring characters. So, we're going to give a rundown real quick of the Crazy Castle series and their licensing. Now, we're going to do it by country, because the whole thing's kind of silly and weird as it is. From then on out, we will, and then we can kind of do a compare and contrast as you go, if you're keeping track, because it is going to get a little fun. But it is kind of easier to do it by each country and then go zoop, 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 than trying zoop, 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 zoop. I mean, look at that. That's like zigzagging and makes you nauseous. Nope, we're just going to go bump, bump. And we'll all come down to it and gain a greater sense for why you have to be careful with licensing. Unless, as I said, you are lucky enough to get global licensing, in which case, meh, it's a lot easier. But again, try not to let your franchise series go past your licensing rights. So, let me just double check one thing real quick. Alright. Okay. Got my train of thought ready. I'm going to ready, set, go on conducting your train of thoughts. Time for the Crazy Castle ride. This all begins with the original Crazy Castle game, which in Japan starred Roger Rabbit and was released in 1989 for the Famicom Disk System, a gaming system that never made it to North American shores. Most Famicom Disk System games were ported straight to the NES. The basics of the Famicom Disk System, for those who have never heard of it, is it operates very similar to the NES as far as hardware capability, but as the name implies, instead of using the standard NES cartridges, used a floppy disk based system. And if you don't know what floppy disks are, you are definitely some of the younger members of our audience, and I will ask you to, after the video, query your parents about what a floppy disk is. Simplest visual aid for you. Picture a little SD card, your little friend, size of your finger, except make it like the size of your hand. And as the name implies, floppy disk, a little softer, a little more prone to bending. They were kind of interesting. Very big in the computer world in the 80s. But yes, we all started with Roger Rabbit, as this was released in conjunction with the Who Framed Roger Rabbit movie, which is an excellent movie, and we will definitely talk about that in a future video one day, because it is a movie that its very nature will probably never ever exist again. But that's a thing for another video. Now, after that, Kemco lost the rights to use Roger Rabbit after a single game, but because the Roger Rabbit rights were negotiated by Disney, Disney instead hooked them up with Mickey Mouse. Now, Mickey Mouse would be featured in the next 5 Crazy Castle games in Japan, which, instead of calling it like Crazy Castle 2 Mickey Mouse, they just went over with calling it Mickey Mouse's Crazy Castle 1, 2, 3, subtitled Balloon Dreams, 4, subtitled Magic Labyrinth, and 5, which was subtitled The Magical Stick. Kemco would then get the rights to Bugs Bunny as they transferred from Disney to Warner Brothers, releasing Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 3 and 4. Now I know what you're saying. What happened to Crazy Castle 1 and 2 on the Bugs Bunny train? That has to do with the North American rights. It's all going to make sense in a moment, but it's still a lot easier than trying to do this the other way. The final game in the Crazy Castle series proper saw the rights once again jump companies from Warner Brothers to Universal, where we had Woody Woodpecker in Crazy Castle 5, even though it's not 5 in the entire franchise. It's actually 1, 6, 7, 8, even though it is officially Crazy Castle 9. As I said, with all the jumping around due to licensing rights, the numbering system got a little screwy. So that covers Japan. Relatively easy. Started with Roger Rabbit, hit a long streak with Mickey Mouse. Then we jumped to Bugs Bunny for a few games. Finished off with Woody Woodpecker. Now let's hit up North America. Woo! North America, the original game that had starred Roger Rabbit was transferred to Bugs Bunny, which is reasonably, adaptation. You're going from a rabbit to a rabbit. Well, rabbit to a bunny, but I'm sorry, visually I cannot tell you the difference between a rabbit and a bunny. Either way, you can see where it made sense for them. However, the Bugs Bunny license would continue as the North American equivalent of the first two Mickey Mouse games. Mickey Mouse 3, however, featured, this is where I do correct myself from earlier, the only original character creation, and that would be Kid Clown. This game being called Kid Clown: A Nightmare World, as in night, N-I-G-H-T, the opposite of day, and mare, the person duly elected in a democratic process to run a city. Get it? It's a pun. Nightmare, nightmare. Kid Clown would later feature in other games produced by Kemco that were not part of the Crazy Castle series proper, such as Crazy Chase 1 and 2. However, this would be the only game featuring him in the Crazy Castle series. In North America, Mickey Mouse 4 became the real Ghostbusters, which means as far as your Ghostbusters licensed games in North America, it was the oddest because this is a game where you're not busting the ghosts, you're temporarily trapping them so you can get through a maze. It was kind of an odd license. Now, yes, I did say the real Ghostbusters because the license specifically was based on the animated counterparts from the iconic cartoon series, not the real-world movie series. Again, slight sidebar for people that do not know why the cartoon series was called The Real Ghostbusters, because previous to the original Ghostbusters film released by Columbia, there had been a black and white live-action TV series called Ghostbusters that was currently owned by the studio Filmation as of the time the original movie came out, because Filmation had not done anything with it in recent years, and it was a TV show, and this was a movie. Columbia was able to use the Ghostbusters name. However, when they got ready to produce the animated spin-off, Filmation stepped up, specifically reasserting their rights by creating their own animated sequel TV series. And legally, we're allowed to simply call it Ghostbusters because of their existing TV series using the term. Thus, Columbia called their series The Real Ghostbusters as a very passive-aggressive shot to Filmation, because by this point, most people had forgotten the original live-action black and white series, and thus didn't know technically that our four scientist buddies and their fight with Gozer and Zool was not the first time that the term Ghostbusters was used in an entertainment perspective. Sidebar ended. So, this brings us back to Mickey Mouse 5 The Magical Stick, which in North America did get to use the Mickey Mouse character. This is the first time that the North American and Japanese games had the same rights. Now, they went from Magical Stick to calling it Magic Wands, but it is the same game this time. There was no need to change sprites for the sake of licensing. This tradition would continue for Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 3 and 4. As they were Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 3 and 4 in both Japan and North America. And our good buddy Woody Woodpecker would continue this stabilization of the licensing, as he was still Woody Woodpecker in Crazy Castle 5 in America. Now, let's go ahead and give you a rundown of the European releases. The original Roger Rabbit game was not released in Europe. The first Mickey Mouse game did use Bugs Bunny just like it did in North America. Mickey Mouse 2, aka Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 2 in North America, became the first Mickey Mouse game in Europe. Europe did not get Mickey Mouse 3, aka Kid Clown and Nightmare World if you're in North America, and Mickey Mouse 4, which was the real Ghostbusters in North America, became Garfield Labyrinth. You guys thought I threw Garfield out earlier in that license discussion just to be random. Nope, I was foreshadowing and setting things up. However, Mickey Mouse 5, which started the North American and Japan syncing, did continue syncing in Europe, as well as Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 3, 4, and Woody Woodpecker in Crazy Castle 5. So, there you go. As I said, fortunately, by the time of Mickey Mouse 5, which was technically the 6th game in the entire Crazy Castle meta franchise, they got their global licensing figured out and things were a lot smoother. Those first 5 games is where things got a little weird, specifically Mickey Mouse 3 and 4, because 3 had Kid Clown, the only original character used in the series, and 4 was the infamous Mickey Mouse in Japan, Ghostbusters in North America, Garfield in Europe. So, there you go. Crazy Castle series is also the Crazy Licensing Rights series. The big question on everybody's mind, though, is, hey, if I can find a copy of these games, should I play them? Again, if you're willing to play a game that's a little slower paced than your traditional platform action game, because you have to use more of a strategic chess-type mindset and carefully plan and time each move to prevent the bad guys from killing you and preventing your forward progress, go for it. They are not badly programmed games at all. For what they wanted to do, they do it well. Now, I've only personally played Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle 1 on the NES. So, I can't directly speak for the later games in the series, but given they kept making those games, there is something to be said for it. Obviously, they were good games on some level because Kemco was able to make enough money off of them to continue licensing, which is not an inexpensive thing to do, and kept confidently producing games in the series because they were producing a lot of other games at the same time as all this going on. They certainly were not putting all their eggs in one basket and making themselves beholden to the Crazy Castle franchise. In fact, for those of you wondering what else Kemco did, they've done a lot of one-time use license games, but their most famous series is actually the Top Gear Racing series, which has produced several games in the series. And let me just go ahead and bounce around in my notes here. How many of those games did they make? Do 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 do. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, you're not. That's not a franchise link. Excuse me one moment, folks. I'm having to do this a little lesson directly. Again, I do apologize for not having all this laid out ahead of time, but, you know, as I often say, this is what you get when you do things in one take. So we got 1, 2, 3 games. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ooh, Hyper Bike. They were adapting themselves and switching gears up from the classic racing. 9, 10. So, we have 10 games in the Top Gear series. The most recent one being produced in 2001, which is Top Gear GT Championship. So, there's a little bit of Kemco plugging fun for you. Now, this wasn't my longest video, but I feel it was a topic worth discussing. Because it does create an interesting debate, and I'm going to leave this up for you fans to think of. And that is very simple. Did all this license swapping madness actually hurt the Crazy Castle franchise by making it a little more confusing on the numbering and drawing attention away from the mechanics of the game itself by leaving people going, hey, I thought these games starred Bugs Bunny. Why are they now suddenly starring Ghostbusters? Or why is it Woody Woodpecker now? This one's got Mickey Mouse. Like, when did Mickey Mouse start being in these games? Well, in Japan, he was in these games for a long time. It was actually a 5th game in the series. What? Where are the other Mickey Mouse games? Oh, you played him as the other Bugs Bunny games in that one Ghostbusters game. You know, it's one of those things where the more research you do, the more questions you ask until, well, you have a good 20-minute explanation. And I still only touched the surface because since I'm not directly involved with Kemco or I've interviewed people who were working for the company, let alone on those games at the time, I cannot directly quote what it was like for the programmers of those games, having to change up the sprites here and there from country to country. It's the risk you take with licensed games. It'll draw casual eyes to the game, but when it's all said and done, especially as you try to build a sequel and franchise it out, do you really want to keep bouncing around? Should you just spin it off into OCs and be done with it? Yes, no, maybe so. You know, at what point do you gain enough confidence in the mechanics of the game to say we don't need famous cultural icons anymore? That's something for all of us to ponder. Or you can just say, well, hey, maybe the fun of it is using the cultural icon characters. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've played a lot of licensed games in my time, and I'm not 100% sure that the mechanics alone carry the game, or if a lot of the fun doesn't come from playing as these famous characters and having some control over their destinies. I mean, I love the Ninja Turtle beat-em-up games. You know, those old arcade ones are just great time, and that Ninja Turtles flavor adds a lot to the mechanics of the game because mechanically they're pretty standard for beat 'em ups, and I'm not sure if some of the unique an interesting stage design would have happened if they weren't influenced by having access to the Ninja Turtles license. I can't tell you what was right or wrong for Kemco at the time. I can't tell you easily what would have happened if they weren't licensing. I will tell you that game licensing of famous characters is going to continue. As I said, celebrity likenesses for sports games, that's the norm. When was the last time you even saw a video game in stores that was like, hey, play football on your console, that didn't feature the professional athletes you've seen on TV? Let alone basketball. And again, WWE owns pro wrestling games in America. The really hardcore enthusiasts, yeah, they'll find a Fire Pro Wrestling. And that's a great series on a pure wrestling video game level, but it doesn't license a lot of famous characters. Fire Pro Wrestling built itself off the custom creation market. But it's always been much bigger in Japan than here in America. And here in America, it's a cult classic thing. It has a niche audience. You play wrestling games in America, you want to play as folks you've seen on TV. Yeah? So game licensing? Yeah, it's a good thing. If you go whole hog on that license and you build your whole game around the flavor of those characters, you can make games that will stand the test of time. Be replayed by multiple generations of gamers. You're just cheap slapping the characters on a glorified shovelware game? Don't know if you're going to get your money's worth out of it. As far as Crazy Castle, again, I definitely recommend the Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle, the original game in the series. But don't go into it expecting to just go crazy. You're going to have to take your time playing each level. You're going to have to think about each move before you make it. Observe your enemies and how they move. And react to your presence, because they are not simple games. You don't just pick up, play it, and blast through the first several levels in a few minutes. Nope. For now, though, that's all the time I'm going to take up for you on this Friday. I want y'all to stay safe. I want you to stay healthy in these trying times. And that's all I'm going to say about what's going on in the world, because we do try to bring things a little positive here and stay steeped in our lovely fiction that we are celebrating on this channel. Because I want you back here in 7 when the next episode of the Friday Ramblings drops. It's my commitment to you. No matter what else is going on out there or in here, something's going to spill out from here directly to you every Friday. That's a promise. And I promise you, and when it comes down to it, Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, Woody Woodpecker, Ghostbusters, Garfield, and big old Battle Royale, probably going to put my money on Bugs Bunny because ain't I a stinker. Later, taters.